Well, good morning. Thank you very much for coming. This morning's press conference is about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and unfortunately, Canada has been found by Julie Gelfand, who is the Commissioner on Environment and Sustainability, to be woefully unprepared to be able to tackle these goals. The goals, which are 17 in number, were signed in 2015, in September 2015. So we're about 20% on our way to the year 2030 when we're supposed to accomplish these 17 goals, which is the world's global agenda to leave no one behind. My name is Mike Simpson. I'm with the British Columbia Council for International Cooperation. I have Jenny Kwan here, who is where our riding is, where our office is. She's our MP. And I also have Nathan Cullen, who is in northern British Columbia, the riding in northern British Columbia. And I've asked them both here to come today to comment on this because in British Columbia, what we have found by traveling around the province and speaking to over 32 communities about these sustainable development goals is that many Canadians, there are a lot more people out there working on these goals than you could ever imagine. We found 2,500 groups. We spoke with over 900 leaders about the sustainable development goals and found nothing but positive energy and interest. And so the question is, and this was a question that we put towards the Commissioner in September of last year, we said, well, if there's so much interest and so many people are working on issues of poverty, issues of agriculture, issues of gender, issues of partnerships on the goals, there are 17 different issues and all these people are working on it. Where's the government? Because it didn't seem like the federal governments were on task with this. So we sent a letter, and any citizen can do this. It's called an environmental petition. And basically what a citizen does is they ask the Commissioner, we asked 10 different questions to the 18 different departments. And we got back answers saying, oh, we're on it, we're on it. There's all these different ways in which we're on it. In fact, or some of them would say, actually, this is not our purview. So imagine if the Ministry of Agriculture or the Ministry of Finance says it's not our purview. Well, goal number 2 is about sustainable agriculture and food security. In what way is that not your purview? So what we did is we said, well, what's going on here? And we got that answer. Now, what's so interesting is 2 weeks ago, Julie Gelfand releases a report. And keep in mind, this is a report that 150 Supreme Audit institutions from around the world have agreed to audit their countries on. And other countries are scoring 7 out of 7 criteria. They're doing well. Like the Netherlands, for example, the Auditor General comes back and says our country is not only well organized, we're on it. We have a swift response. In Canada, Julie comes back after studying the situation, and woefully unprepared was her answer. 1.5 out of 7. We have no plan, no strategy. We're unprepared to go to the United Nations this summer in July and give a voluntary national report. This is a serious situation. And what I'm getting at here, Nathan, Jenny, is that in your ridings, what we're finding is that British Columbians are not just prepared, they're excited, they're out there, they're doing things, they're on the ground trying to solve problems. And then the question is, where's the federal leadership? When we met with the province of British Columbia, they go, well, where's the feds? When we meet in towns like Smithers, who have your hometown. Smithers has a whole series of well-being indicators they can actually track. How are they doing next to the United Nations indicators on this? North Vancouver, right now considering a resolution on the SDGs. These are people that are stepping up at the city level, at the provincial level, and the question is, where's the federal leadership? Maybe I'll just hand it over to Jenny for a comment, because I think that the downtown east side, where I go to work every day, is when Canada goes to the United Nations and it says, hey, we're doing great on poverty, we're doing great on poverty. Keep in mind there is no national poverty indicator to be able to decide, are we doing okay on poverty? So what we've been asking the government is, hey, if you're going to go to the United Nations, you better drill down and disaggregate the data, because if you go to, for example, Manitoba, 76% of children living in poverty if you're First Nations. If you go to the downtown east side, what are we finding? So, Jenny, I'm going to hand it over to you to comment a little bit.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I want to say thank you also to BCCIC for the incredible work that you do each and every day. What we're trying to do here is really to bring accountability to the table and to say to the national government that you can't get up on the international stage. You can't say to Canadians that you care deeply, that you're going to act on these measures, and then in reality to actually do nothing at all. In my riding, Vancouver East is a fantastic riding with a wide, diverse diverse array of people. But with that said, though, we also have a multitude of challenges. Just by way of background, our beautiful riding is the riding to the third largest urban Aboriginal community. We are amongst one of the lowest income ridings in the country. Within it, we have the downtown east side, where we have fantastic people, activists, people who are fighting for equality and justice every single day. However, they also have challenges as well. It is not a misnomer that people are challenged with, for example, living in poverty, the lack of housing, food security was mentioned, and food is constantly an issue for the people in Vancouver East and particularly in the downtown east side. In this national level, we've been pushing for the government to act on, for example, bringing forward a national housing strategy. Now, the government will say to you that they have brought forward a national housing strategy. However, if you read the fine print, you will realize that 90% of that money for the national housing strategy will not flow until after the next election. Yet we have a crisis on the issue around homelessness. How often do you actually have a leader say, we recognize that there is a crisis, but hold on, just wait for a couple of years, we'll come to it yet, and then we will invest in dealing with that issue in a couple of years while you're having the crisis at this moment. A homelessness count, by the way, was just done most recently in the city of Vancouver, and once again, those numbers have gone up again. So take another issue in terms of addressing the issue is the missing and murdered Indigenous women situation. Yes, we have a national inquiry, but the inquiry is troubled in the sense that we're now into the second and third phase of the inquiry. Yet the resources are not there in place. There's not even the appropriate timeline to ensure that expert witnesses, for example, would have the opportunity to fully participate in this. And it is very challenged in this way. On the one hand, you have families who've come forward to pour their hearts out, to share their stories, to be re-traumatized and risk being re-traumatized again by sharing their story. They do this. Why? Because they want answers. And most important of all, they want government to act to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. But yet when it comes to ensuring that the meaningful dialogue is in place and the work is in place with expert witnesses and the NGOs who's on the ground working with loved ones and with the people who are at risk every day, when it comes to having them fully participate in the inquiry, the government has fallen short on this. And that is an ongoing issue. Now, the New Democrats have proposed a whole array of suggestions for the government to act on, including my colleague, Bridget Sanssouci. She tabled a bill, Bill C-245, calling for a national strategy to end poverty, calling for a commissioner to be in place to ensure that the government is following through with a plan, to say that we need to include social conditions in addressing a national strategy on poverty. And what does the government do? They vote against it. So I am in some ways, sadly, not surprised about the findings of the report, where in fact there are 7 measures that needs to be in place, and the government has failed to address even touch on, never mind address, touch on 5 of the measures that is there. So you just got to wonder where we're at. And the truth of the matter is Canada is not there. They're standing in the podium pretending that they're there and to say Canada's back. But in reality, on the ground, if you come to the communities, if you check out the report that's been done by an independent authority, you will find that, frankly, Canada is not there. The accountability is not there for Canadians, and the accountability is not there for the global community as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nathan Cullen. I'm the Member of Parliament from Skeena-Bulkley Valley, which is in the northwest part of British Columbia. I think Jenny and I represent 2 very different but similar faces of the issues that we're talking about here today, from one of the most urban ridings in the country to one of the most rural and spread out. I'd like to join Jenny in congratulating Mike and the BC CIC for their incredible work in highlighting the issues that are happening both internationally and have such great effect to us nationally and locally. When we're talking about poverty, homelessness, food security, environmental protections, these are some of the most basic things, the most basic aspects of quality of life that we require. And it is both incredibly encouraging to hear the number of communities that you've engaged with, the amount of leadership and energy that's going on around not just British Columbia, but around the entire country, wanting Canada to meet these goals, wanting to respond to the challenges that we face. And on the other hand, so discouraging to hear from the Environment Commissioner who audits Canada's performance against what Canada committed to the world, and to see that out of the 7 major goals, we're failing on 5.5 of them, just on basic accountability. And if you don't measure, you can't manage. And the concern that we have as New Democrats in talking about these issues is the government refuses to take account, to actually measure how we're doing on these things that we've committed to the world. I can recall the Prime Minister standing on the world stage recently after being elected and saying, Canada is back. And it was so warmly welcomed by the international community. Great, Canada's back. After many years under Stephen Harper, where we pulled back from the international community, Canada was back. I think there is a certain sense of disappointment that we're hearing from our international partners in realizing that those words have not been met by concrete action. And Madame Gelfand's report clearly points that out. The last thing I'll say is that coming from northwestern British Columbia, a very high percentage of First Nations communities reside in my riding, and we see on the ground inaction from the government, what the results are in people's lives, that they can't get access to decent drinking water, they can't get access to good paying jobs, they can't get access to decent food. All of these things add up to me to say that a government who made many important commitments to the international community and to Canadians is failing its people in its most basic way. This is sounding the alarm. And now we need to see the government respond, not just to the Commissioner's report, but to the work of the BC CIC, and report back to the world and to Canadians of how we're going to fix this. We want them to succeed on this. This is not a partisan issue. It's not left and right. This is right and wrong. And we need something much, much better than what we've seen in the first 2.5 years of the government. Thanks very much, Mike.
So maybe I'll leave, I know there may be some questions, but I will just leave you with one gripping example of what we could do or where we're doing well. And that is that Canada, I think right now, can be very proud of its policy statement on international development. For example, that in the United Nations, the first goal is to leave no one behind in terms of poverty. So it's to eliminate and get rid of poverty everywhere for everyone in all of its forms. That is a very laudable and ambitious goal. If we think about that, that means that we need to step up when it comes to helping other parts of the world. And the goal and indicator is to achieve what's called 0.7%, 0.07%. So think of 3/4 of a penny for every dollar that your country makes in gross national income. That has been the indicator that our Prime Minister Pearson set forward for the international community, and it has held for 40 years, since 1968. Do you know where we're at today? We are at the lowest overseas development assistance ratio of all time with this government. It is at 0.24%. That means that our federal government puts less than 1/4 of a penny for every dollar that we make nationally into helping people and helping the world become a better place. Do you know that the average Canadian does way better than that? You can look it up. I think it's 4 times that amount. So our Canadians on the ground are super into changing the world, making it a better place, showing up. But our federal government has been falling further and further and further behind. So when it comes to a national poverty strategy, yes, we need that. Let's look around the world, and maybe what we need in this case is we need help. Let's look at New Zealand right now. What are they doing? They're going to get every single homeless person off the street by winter. Now, that's a commitment to homelessness and poverty reduction. Why can't we see that kind of sense of urgency, which is what the United Nations has asked us to take when it comes to Agenda 2030? And for those of you who are not familiar with this document, I suggest you read it. It's called Transforming Our World. Imagine 193 of the world's leaders signing a document that says, this is the first time that our world and humanity has actually agreed to end poverty. So it is laudable and ambitious. But it also says this is the last generation with a chance at saving the planet. Those are strong words. And that has to be done by 2030. So there is a sense of urgency on climate change, on energy, on all of these issues, that if we don't get this done by 2030, then we are in serious, serious trouble on the planet. And everybody signed it. It wasn't like it was an argument. Everybody signed that document. The Pope was there. Bono was there. Everybody was there for that meeting in 2015. And now the question is, where's the responsibility on implementation? And when Julie Gelfand, the Madam Commissioner, steps forward and comes forward and from a completely independent perspective, that's her job. It's not like we're coming up with this conclusion. She's concluding this, going, we're woefully unprepared. That's time for Canadians, and I'm glad to see you two here. I hope other politicians, we're nonpartisan, so I hope every single politician is paying attention to this. Because if we're to stand up and be proud of our country in July at the United Nations when we do our report, we're going to need that kind of response. So I don't know if there's any questions or any further comments. Do you two have anything more to say? Yeah, please.
So are you thinking it's a lack of will, lack of imagination, or lack of money?
It's not a lack of will. I'll tell you, there are some people. Let me give you an example. Madame Bibeau, who is for international development, the Minister for International Development. She has actually tabled a fantastic policy. It's a feminist international assistance policy. The problem is that the finance minister and other people are going to have to put some real resources behind that. So you can't, this is the problem right now. I think you're hitting it on the button. We've got a lot of very good talk going on. There's a lot of people looking to Canada at the United Nations going, yay, Canada's back. But if you're going to do that and put forward a feminist international assistance policy, you would think you'd throw some cash behind it. And so if we don't see a serious investment when it comes to the sustainable development goals, what they said recently is they said, okay. We're going to put $100 million into the SDGs so that there's some kind of implementation. That came out in the budget recently.
Pour M. Cullen,
Yeah.
relativement à un autre dossier, j'aimerais avoir votre réaction aux allégations contre Mme Moore ce matin.
Oui, je n'ai pas beaucoup de nouvelles choses à dire, seulement que j'ai lu comme vous dans l'Internet. S'ils sont vrais, sont troublants, certainement. Et mes attentes, c'est similaire de les autres cas comme ça, avec peut-être, je ne sais pas, une investigation similaire, parce qu'on a une politique et on doit appliquer la politique pour tout le monde. Donc, c'est grave, certainement. Je ne sais pas quoi c'est vrai ou non. C'est seulement une chose sur le site web de, je ne sais pas, Radio-Can ou CBC.
À quel point, parce que là, c'est le deuxième cas quand même en peu de temps au NPD, à quel point c'est embarrassant pour le parti?
C'est pas une question d'embarrassant ou non. C'est troublant s'il y a le standard, le niveau, les attentes a changé pour nous. Après MeToo et toutes les nouvelles préoccupations et réalités pour nous comme leaders, comme politiciens, c'était très important pour avoir un niveau, une attente pour tout le monde, respectueux, et pour avoir un endroit ici sans relâchement. Donc, pour moi, c'est pas une question de politique, c'est seulement une question de notre comportement. Et comme pour avoir les mêmes règles pour tout le monde, et pour et aussi le même processus pour tout le monde.
Dans le cas de Mme Moore, est-ce que...
J'imagine le leadership va dire quelque chose aujourd'hui, je ne sais pas, pour dire c'est quoi le plan, c'est quoi la prochaine étape. Et c'est pour le leadership de régler ça. C'est pas pour moi comme un député.
So what kind of questions does it raise for you?
Well, certainly all I know is what I've read on the report on CBC, as I think that's true for everybody. My expectation, I think, would be the expectation of Canadians that we would apply the same process as we've applied in the recent past, that the leadership will make a statement of some kind today, would be my expectation, or soon at least, and describe what the process would be. And I would imagine that the process would be very similar for other cases in the past and in the recent past.
So what do you think should happen then?
Well, certainly a conversation with Madame Moore to find out what the occasion was. I think the allegations date back a number of years. And then a very clear statement of what the process is going to be like for both her and for our caucus and for the public. Yet we've made some very strong statements as New Democrats about how we conduct ourselves and how things are going to be managed if there's allegations, and that we believe survivors, and that we go forward with an open and transparent process so that people can understand, everybody can understand all along the way what's going to happen next.
What does that mean, sending it to a private inquiry, an investigator?
If that's what the leadership deems, and that certainly the allegations are troubling enough, it might merit that, but that's not for me to say. That's why they get paid the big bucks. It's a difficult situation for everybody, and I'm sure Christine will have something to say, certainly in conversations with the leader, hopefully quite soon, because they're concerning things. You want to get at this as quickly as possible to everybody's benefit.
It's a process that do you think that she would have the opportunity to go through some training and then stay in caucus?
Yeah, it's hard to speculate, Julie, just in terms of what comes next, but certainly the most respectful thing to do is to have a very consistent and standard approach to how we deal with any allegations like this, and that we treat the accuser with full respect and apply the policies that Jagmeet has talked about in terms of believing survivors and having a survivor-led process. I think that's only fair, and that would be something that I think Canadians will be looking for and expect.
Do you see some irony there that she is the one that complained about Erin Weir, now there are complaints about her?
Irony isn't the word I would apply. I think it's in any of the, there's nothing great about any of this, right? You know, this is a challenging story to read about. Certainly, it's a difficult story to read about. Yet, it's a story that we've just read on the internet. We have nothing more than that other than the CBC reporting, and so I think it's due respect to follow up with a proper series of conversations. Certainly with Christine, and certainly, as is the case in the past, it is survivor-led. That is the person making the accusation helps lead through the process. I think that is something that we've come to, and I think that's something that Canadians would expect from us. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. Merci. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.